Welcome to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. This week we're interviewing Gbekorbu. He has some really fascinating stats on different Saskatchewan communities, especially the growth in some areas, including a huge jump in the community of Estevan. Watch the full interview as Chris also gives us his prediction of the 2021 housing market here in Saskatchewan. Hope you enjoy.
You're listening to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, where we chat with real estate experts from across the province to learn what's happening in the real estate market. Here's your host, Ron Quaroni.
Hello, everyone. Today we are joined by Gbekorbu, an economic analyst with the Saskatchewan Realtors Association. Lots of people are looking at housing these days and wondering what's going to happen in the year to come. So, Chris, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Excellent. So, Chris, let's start off with last year. What does the data tell us about 2020 and where in Saskatchewan do we sit?
Okay, so 2020 was actually a very good year, all things considered. When the province went into lockdown in March, a lot of analysts thought that the market would end up really suffering. Our organization, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, we took steps right away to make sure that buying and selling homes is going to be safe. And we put a pause on open houses. We limited the number of people that could actually go into a home to view a home. Later on in the year, we made masking mandatory for all of our members before the province made it a mandatory thing. And I think all of that kind of helped to make sure that we remained an allowable service allowed to continue to buy and sell real estate. And I think that's part of the reason why we ended up seeing a really strong year. We haven't seen a year like we did last year since 2014. So across the province overall, sales are up 24.5% on average. Median prices are up 1.2%. Houses are staying on the market an average of 75 days, which was down 4% from the year before. In certain markets, we even had homes being sold pretty much the day or a couple days after they were listed. So some homes were just gone right away. We did see some bidding wars happening as well. Inventory, which measures how long it would take to sell all of the properties that are on the market without introducing new houses, that ended up declining pretty much in every market as well. We went down from 11 months of inventory to 8. The lower number of days on market, the declining levels of inventory, drop in the number of new listings, all speak to reduced supply of resale housing, while at the same time suggesting increased demand. And I think this ultimately helps to account for some of the price increase that we ended up seeing. And again, overall, just a very strong year. Year to date, I didn't pull the sales figures, but I know that we were up quite a bit. Like I said, I think 24%.
Just on a personal level, Chris, does that surprise you? Like if we go back to when the pandemic started and you guys were putting in these measures and things were happening, could you have predicted what we saw?
I'd say no. And pretty much I think everybody thought, we're in lockdown, we can't do anything. It's going to be really hard to, go out and buy homes, sell homes and that. And then for, this to just happen, I do think it is kind of phenomenal. But I guess, kind of looking back on it now, we did kind of end up getting that work from home, or I guess that transition to working from home into place. So, we kind of adapted to things. And, I think, as people kind of realize, well, I'm kind of stuck at home, I can't do anything. I don't really necessarily like where I'm at, or the house I'm in right now isn't really working for me. It's like, I want to buy a house and it's still easy enough for me to do it. So why not?
Yeah, you bet. So when looking at individual Saskatchewan communities, do we see ones that saw significant growth?
Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of preface this with some stats talk because I'm a bit of a nerd that way.
So we love stats. We love stats.
But one of the problems with looking at some of the smaller communities that we do track is that because the numbers are so small, like the absolute numbers, we can get into some very odd percentage changes. Melfort's a good example here. So in Melfort, we saw a 19% decline in year-to-date sales. But when you look at the actual absolute numbers, Melfort went from 79 sales in 2019 to 64 in 2020. So, percentage wise, it's huge, almost 20%, but absolute number wise, it's not that big. So that's one of the, I'd say cautions with looking at percentage changes.
So we were touching on Melfort there, and we saw them go down 19%. But you're kind of saying that due to the fact that it's not really in, like you say, absolute terms, it's not a huge jump when you look at those numbers. Other communities that we saw some movement there?
So yeah, another great community to consider is Estevan. So Estevan ended up seeing a 62.4% jump in sales. And it's actually the largest jump in sales that we've seen in all of the markets that we track. Interestingly as well, inventory in Estevan also saw the biggest drop. So, of all the homes on the market, people were just buying homes up in Estevan and, kind of really reducing the inventory. Now that said, we look at January 2021, inventory in Estevan is still high, still at 14.3 months of inventory. So that's still a lot. It would still take over a year to sell all of the houses that are on the market in Estevan right now. But again, that was, a 62.4% increase in sales year to date. Now, part of the reason why I think that happened, earlier in the year, the provincial government did approve funding for the, what's it called? The Accelerated Site Closure Program, which is basically just helping to ensure that kind of defunct wells are cleaned up. So, we did see kind of this, I'll say, spending to kind of ensure that there were jobs going to be available. So that could partially explain why we did see this massive jump in Estevan. People had secure jobs. There's some work happening in that community. So that could, again, easily account for some of the jump in sales there.
So you touched on the absolute numbers for Melfort. Do we have those for Estevan as well to kind of contrast that?
We went from 85 sales in 2019 to 138 sales in 2020. So
again,
even
that is, even though it's a smaller number, if you were comparing it to Saskatoon or Regina, that's still a pretty significant jump for a smaller city in Saskatchewan.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So are there any other cities that we can touch on today, Chris?
So Saskatoon, year-to-date sales are up 18.2%. And Regina was up 17%, and in absolute terms, so Saskatoon went from 3,614 sales in 2019 to 4,272, and Regina 2,594 to 3,036. So again, much larger numbers, absolute terms, but again, also much larger cities. We kind of expect to see a larger number of sales. But again, in percentage terms, not nearly as high as something like Estevan.
For sure. When compiling these numbers, Chris, is it just done based on what real estate agents are sending to you and kind of what you're seeing from that? Or how are those stats compiled?
So we get all of the data from the multiple listing service. So it's, keeps a record of all of the transactions that are occurring. Keeps track of days on market, what the listing price is, what the sales price is, all of this information, and it gets put into our database, and then I just kind of crunch the numbers.
Do we have an indication of the price difference year over year for the province of Saskatchewan and how much that has gone up or down?
So prices across the province, I don't have that one right in front of me. I do know that it did go up. I'm going to say about 3%, but I could be wrong on the absolute numbers because I don't have the value in front of me. But I do know that, yeah, prices did go up. One of the problems when dealing with prices, though, is that, we are comparing a bunch of different properties. And, the type of property is absolutely going to have an influence on the actual price. One of the things that we like to use is the home price indicator, which does actually look at the price of specific types of homes. we only have that for Regina and Saskatoon at the moment. I know that we're planning on expanding that to a bunch of the other major centers in the province shortly. So that'll give us a little bit more of a better idea of what's happening price wise. But yeah, to kind of look at it then across the province, you're not really comparing one type of house to another type of house across the province. So it is a little bit trickier to kind of look at prices in that respect.
In the early part of 2021, what are the numbers telling us?
So January has actually been a ridiculously strong month. We actually haven't seen this kind of a January since 2012, which I think is absolutely amazing. I think part of it is building off of the momentum that we saw from last year. Across the province, sales were up over 49% this January, which again is absolutely amazing. So we went from 616 sales last January to 919 this January. New listings were down just over 5%, so going from 1,855 to 1,758. And inventories are also down in 18 of the 19 markets that we track. Now, new listings are down 10% from their historical averages. So there are fewer houses being put on the market right now, but at the same time, we do have a rising number of sales happening. And with that falling inventory, it does suggest there is kind of this really strong demand for housing at the moment, especially with interest rates being so low right now as well. It is kind of a good time to buy. So I think, again, we are seeing new listings being less than they have been in the past. And I think that's kind of indicative of the fact that, some people right now are still a little hesitant to put their homes on the market. But we do have this very strong demand. And I think what we're going to end up seeing happening then is, prices are going to kind of increase. It's just simple supply and demand. So we might see more and more potential sellers being, incentivized to start putting their homes on the market. So we should probably see some more listings get put onto the market. And again, that should help to kind of ease some of that supply constraint, which will help to get more and more activity happening.
So this kind of ties into my next question, but just prefacing it a little bit, are we going to see a slow increase then as we usually hit the summer months? It does get busier for real estate listings and sales. So this strong start to the year, is that going to kind of bleed into the rest of the year and we might see an even busier 2021?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. The big joke with economists is that economists have predicted the past, and you can make numbers up. The past, 7 of the 4 recessions, kind of thing. So prediction is kind of hard. I honestly, we've only had 1 month of data. It is hard to tell for sure. But one of the issues that I do see, and I actually am working on a blog post that goes into a lot of this in a lot more detail. We have some analysts predicting that housing prices are going to go up anywhere from I think 5 to 11% this year nationally. The economy is going to end up doing quite well, and that kind of thing should help to kind of fuel demand and the real estate market overall. We have also had some analysts who are quite pessimistic, and I think CMHC predicts up to a 45% decline in prices, but part of their projection is based on their stress test, and they just want to really make sure that they're able to insure their mortgages. So I think their projection is way out of line. As for what's going to happen in our market, I'm cautiously optimistic. We have seen price increases, and I think that this price increase that we've seen will help to encourage potential sellers to put their homes on the market. We've got really low interest rates at the moment, which should help people to get mortgages and that. We've got people who again probably want to start buying more and more homes. We had a lot of renters who want to get out of a rental situation and get into a home right now. With COVID kind of keeping us at home, people are having they're kind of reevaluating their space and what they want out of a home. So, people who might not have been able to have bought something in 2020 might now be able to afford a place in 2021. And so, yeah, they'll probably want to be right out there buying more. January, February, March tends to be slower, but again, we did have this rather strong market so far, and I think there's kind of this optimism. I've read some of the surveys looking at consumer expectations as well. A lot of people are expecting real estate to be a good investment for 2021, and so again, we do see the kind of this desire to be in the real estate market. And I think because there's the strong desire, things are driven a lot by expectation, that people are going to want to continue to go out there and buy and sell. So I think that we could easily see a much stronger year than we did last year. But again, and this is maybe me being a little bit pessimistic as well, we have to also be cautious there. Something could happen again, like COVID. We could have a second wave or a third wave kind of thing, which could put a damper on the market. Hard to say. Where things are going right now, I'd say that, we will probably see a relatively good year though.
Excellent. When we look at Saskatchewan and we compare it to the rest of the country, it seems like Saskatchewan saw a smaller growth in compared to our sales versus everyone else. Is there an explanation for that, in that why didn't Saskatchewan see as much of a rise as the rest of the country, or more specifically places like BC and Ontario?
I think part of the reason for that is that our economy has been a little bit more depressed. And I know that we're kind of coming off of a recession, whereas I think BC and Ontario were a little bit more booming. So we had to overcome some of that initial negative territory. I know another factor that plays quite a bit into things is immigration. Saskatchewan doesn't receive nearly as much immigration as places like BC, Ontario. So we don't have quite the same numbers. And, they do have a lot more volume.
Yeah, that's a great answer of that might be a factor in some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I think also, you consider that, our economy is a little bit more dependent on oil. And oil prices were also kind of really depressed. So there has been I guess we've had a lot to overcome, but I still think we did really well, all things considered.
Yeah,
again, 10 of our major centers or 9 of our major centers saw really strong growth. Only one saw kind of negative growth. In a pandemic year when everybody thought that the real estate market was going to tank, to see any kind of growth, I think was quite important. And I think also, we really had 2 months of virtually no real estate activity, yet we still saw, growth and numbers much higher than we have since 2014.
Awesome. Anything else to touch on the Saskatchewan market as from your perspective, Chris?
Can't think of anything on the Saskatchewan market, no.
Fantastic. So before I get to your contact details and how people can read your blogs and get some of your great information, it's a question we ask everyone who comes on the podcast. I hand Chris $1 million and I say, Chris, you can buy property anywhere in Saskatchewan. Where are you buying?
Well, I'm a little bit biased. I grew up in Regina. I like Regina, and that I would buy in Regina. And, thinking of my dream home, my wife and I actually just bought a place last year, and it's kind of perfect for us. So, the house that I bought is kind of my dream house. That's what I'd go with. It's got absolutely everything that we need. We have considered a vacation property as well, but we haven't really looked into it all that much. I know that we were thinking maybe something along a lake, but don't know where exactly yet.
Fantastic. So, Chris, where can folks get a hold of more information from you if someone wants to get a hold of SRA or they have more questions? What's the best way to get in contact, and what's the best way to follow the content that you're providing?
So the best way to get a hold of me is chris@sra.ca. That's just again, probably the easiest way, because then you don't have to worry about my last name or anything. As for contacting the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, our website, I don't actually know the URL for that because I don't use that one. Our main website, Saskatchewan Realtors Association.ca, all one word. That'll have some information available to the public. And we do have some market statistics up there. We've got some of our blog posts and some of our other content that's a little bit more, I guess, consumer friendly.
Not as data heavy then.
Not as data heavy and not as geared towards realtors, which is where I spend a lot of my time on our back end. But we do put out some stuff for consumers as well.
Can you just quickly touch on that, of like when you are providing information to a realtor, what kind of stats and stuff are you giving to them?
So I'm generally providing them with that snapshot of what's happened in the past month. I also providing some insight as to where the market might be going, so that they can kind of better structure what they want to do with their business and kind of their marketing efforts. I'd say most of what I am doing is kind of helping to serve our members, serve realtors, as pretty much most of what everybody in our organization does. But we are also, realizing that we also, play a bit of a role with the public and helping them to have a better understanding of what's happening in the market as well, so that they can make, more informed buying and selling decisions.
And touching on that, like when a realtor gets a stat and you say it like helps them with their marketing, is that in the sense that it might help them look ahead a little bit and say, I might not want to price this house way up there because we're going to see potentially a market slowdown, and it just kind of helps them find that nice balance, as a realtor has to do, between the good selling price that is going to get the house sold in a good amount of time.
Yeah, I can't speak specifically to a realtor's pricing strategy, but I think that is a very valid point, that yes, they exist to help people get a home either bought or sold, and they want to make sure that it's priced appropriately so that it does sell. And they don't want to overprice something. So if it's overpriced, it's not going to sell. It's going to stay on the market for a ridiculously long period of time, which will end up actually dragging the price down. So yeah, I think that part of what we do is, yes, definitely helping them to influence their pricing strategy. But what that actual pricing strategy is up to the individual agent.
Awesome. Chris, that does it for all of my questions. Just thank you so much for coming on today. That was lots of great stats. I really enjoyed this, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks again to Chris for coming on the show. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. Share this content with your friends if you found it informative, and make sure to like and subscribe for more content every week on Saskatchewan Real Estate. If you'd like to learn more about your local market, make sure to send me a message for suggestions on future episodes. You can contact me by heading to my website, ronqmortgage.ca. Bye for now.
This has been the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. If you like this episode, find more information and episodes on our Facebook and YouTube pages. If you'd like to be a guest or have a conversation you'd like to learn more about, let us know by messaging the show on Facebook. Thanks for listening.